The Zayd that was around the time of the Rav Tzadok, and my mother's uncle was the Rebbe's Hebrew secretary, the Friedrich Rebbe and the Heinrich Rebbe's secretary, both of them. And so the Rebbe sent me. So he sends. So my sister is a Maharat, right? She is my Zayda Yisrael Chanovich, Yisrael Chanowitz, and he got one of the last transit visas at Sugihara, the Japanese premier wrote.
My grandfather was also saved by Sugihara.
Yeah. Spazzy Lubavitch, high five. Yeah. So anyway, letter. So my sister is a Maharaj. She's the
real Lubavitch sleeper cell.
Yeah, she's the real. Yeah, she's a kaifer baker. No, she's a good lady. Yeah, we're twins. So I like to say we're the only Orthodox rabbinic twins out there. Anyway, so we got a letter from the Rebbe. My parents got a letter. The Rebbe used to write letters when people had children, and the minhag in Chabad is that you read the letter that the Rebbe wrote you at the wedding. So we have this letter that he wrote for both of us, the same letter. So he wrote Mazel Tov on the birth of his son. He should grow up l'Torah, l'chuppah, l'maisim tovim. And then he says, and for a bas, he quotes the Gemara. He says, you also say l'Torah, l'chuppah, l'maisim tovim, and he underlined the word Torah. So when I found the letter, like a few, when I was in Maryland, I called her up. I said the Rebbe knew. So that will be in, that's in like the untold Rebbe stories.
Like I know, I wrote it. I underlined it.
Yeah. So that was, so the Rebbe knew. But I used to get dollars. There was one line for lekech and one line for dollars. I would always go to the dollars. And then I'd buy like baseball cards with, I'd get like Man and Lee rookies. Anyway, so I want to talk.
You're not that old.
Yeah, I'm not that old. No, but I bought car in the 80s. 89 Tops was the first complete set I bought. That was when, for Tamima, we used to go after yeshiva, buy baseball cards at Hot Corner. At Hot Corner, we'd buy gushes and a fruit by the foot. We go to Hot Corner and get a pack of 89 Tops. And we throw the chewing gum away. I had a cousin chewing gum. Anyway, he was modernish. So I wanted to. I didn't know if we do Makaris or not, but anyway, the Hakdama of Rav Tzadok is really something. I wanted to pick a makar that we could learn that really is something that personally I'm kind of. Navigating, and I really spoke to me when I saw this. I was looking online, I couldn't find the Divrei Yisrael, right, the Magister Rebbe, and then I remembered that the Divrei Yisrael I probably first saw in a Rabbi Simon packet, so I went to my garage and pulled out like boxes and boxes of packets until I found the Divrei Yisrael and photocopied it, so that was very good. Anyway,
how'd you get it on this one little page, though? Usually it's on a much bigger...
Yeah, usually it's on the... But I didn't have the legal.
Okay.
Right, the legal.
But it fit, okay.
Yeah, anyway, so right at the beginning of Tzidkas Tzaddik... This is,
It's
it's part of the cheshbon. So let's learn the first... We'll do the first piece. We'll talk... I'll give, a little idea. But first... I think a story that ties in very nicely. I heard from Rav Chaim Eisenstein. It was in YU when we used to have a Bekiah shir. So he said, Amais as follows. He said that there was a Jew that was living under the rule of the parts, and one day he got fed up, and he decided, that's it, like I'm leaving. But everybody knows you run away from the parts and it's certain death. So he decides he's going to wait till the middle of the night. He gets all of his nechasim together, he hitches up his wagon, he's going to ride out, never to be seen again. As his luck would have it, the parts, right, is coming back from a night of drinking in the local tavern, and he sees this Jew who's leaving with his whole family on his wagon, and he says, "Where are you going, Jew?" To run away from one of the parts is certain death, and Jews, we always knew how to think on our toes, because we were in tough spots. So he says, "I'm going to the Rebbe for such and such a yontif." Even in those days, right, the Jews had religious liberty, so he said, I'm going to the Rebbe for Yontif, and he left and he never came back. Anyway, the Parz is walking around in town the next day, and he sees that the tailor is open for business, the Jewish tailor. So he walks in, he grabs him. He says, Jew, what are you open for business today? It's a Yontif. I saw your friend last night going to be with the Rebbe. He says, no Yontif today. Just another work day. So the Parz gets infuriated. And he says, that's it, I'm going to run after your buddy, because one of the two of you are lying. And whoever's lying, right, I'm going to hang him up. Anyway, so the tailor, he understands what's going on already. And he says, by any chance, did he mention what holiday it was that he was going to observe with the Rebbe? He said, yeah. He said he was going to celebrate Yom Pleitasenu. Right, Yom Pleitasenu, the day of our escape. Yom Pleitasenu. Oh, Yom Pleitasenu, the tailor says, that's a holiday. That's a Yontif, but that's a Yontif that every Jew celebrates on their own, individually in their own time. Oh, so what I didn't realize when Rav Eisenstein told that story, he had got that story from
his guy.
Right, his Rebbe from Landers. What's his name? Braunspiegel.
Yeah.
And his Yom Pleitasenu was the day that
he left Hawaii, right.
So okay, but I think that with that Hakdama we read Rav Tzadok, and it really is like, very powerful now. So Reishish Knisas Adam L'Avodas Hashem. When the person first is entering into Avodas Hashem, and the way I'm reading it now at this junction in my life is a little bit different than I think what Rav Tzadok may have meant. So he says, when a person is first entering into Avodas Hashem, tzarich lios b'chipazon, k'moi shematzinu b'Pesach Mitzrayim, shoyinecha b'chipazon. So we know ki b'chipazon. Everything happens with haste. Right, whenever I think of haste, my mom used to have a haste makes waste magnet on the fridge. So we never had a positive association for haste. I was like, haste? Like, makes waste? Like, what is that? It's bad. B'chipazon, right, when a person is first entering, he has to enter b'chipazon. Shoyanecha b'chipazon below Pesach Doros. So the difference between Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Doros is that Pesach Mitzrayim is eating b'chipazon, right? We know they went out without, right, the bread baking on their back, which anyway I gave last year b'shalach. I talked about this a little because, we say b'schus nashim tzikanios negal mitzrayim, as righteous ladies who caused us to be redeemed from Mitzrayim. So I always was wondering, well, what does Gemara mean when it says that? And then when you look at Shiras Miriam, so what happens, right? Right, Miriam gets up and she takes out, right, this is a Debbie Friedman song. Mm-hmm. And the hymn, right? She takes her drums and her tambourines and the different instruments. And I always thought, women are known they're prone to overpacking. There's a stereotype. My wife uses everything that she takes with her in her suitcase, but there's a stereotype. So, what were they thinking? And then, it dawned on me. Actually, I think my sister told me this. We share Divrei Torah and sermon ideas. So she said that. Right, the women understood that no matter how bleak of a time it looks, there's always going to be a time for celebration right around the corner, and they packed accordingly. Right, I mean the guys went out and without their pants on, but the women understood that there's going to be occasion, right, to use, and they're schlepping, meaning they're schlepping instruments with them because there's going to be that's what it means. B'schus nashim tzikanios negal mitzrayim. That it's that emunascha ba'alelos, that belief that no matter how dark it is, there's a bright sunny day right around the corner that really, was the pakopakadati, the password that Sarach Bas Asher, was the one who had, which is when Moshe said, pakopakadati, he's going to be the Redeemer, the one who's going to be able to really infuse, and that's what the women did. They were able to infuse within the tzibur that, it's not going to be done. So Pesach Mitzrayim is b'chipazon, and Pesach Doros is, it's slowly. We eat the whole night. I don't know if this is exactly what he means, but that's how I take it. So let's just finish and then we'll discuss. So the Kohen says, right, that in the beginning a person has to basically, totally. I like to think of it if you're, let's say you're sitting at the blackjack table and you're playing $10 hands the whole night, right? Or is that a good Rebbe Keys? Or let's say, right? So you had a long Purim, and like drink after drink after drink, and then like at some point it needs to come up, right? Some people would say, okay, slowly, like I'm going to sober up, like hour after hour, but like sometimes it just like all has to come up, and then you can like nurse yourself back to health. You're almost doing something that's out of character. That's what I was saying before. Like Bnei Yisrael had to act out of character. Rav Tzadok is saying they're not doing something which is like normal in avodas Hashem. Right? If a person has, that's why I was using the blackjack analogy. You sit at the table and you're playing $10 hands. The die 6 and 8, 6 and 8. But sometimes you get into such a big hole that you to get back to even, you'll do something out of character. And that's what Rav Tzadok, I mean, he's not using that analogy, l'havdil of adults, but that's what Rav Tzadok is saying had to happen by Geulah Mitzrayim. That Bnei Yisrael, and I think happens every time around this time of year, like a person, b'chlal b'frat, when it comes to Geulah, sometimes we have to do something that is so much out of character in order to get ourselves out of, like, the chipazon means, I mean, that's at least the way I look at it. I love to hear, how everybody else reads this Rav Tzadok, but I look at what Rav Tzadok is saying is that Bnei Yisrael is doing something that's totally out of character, but that's just like a one-off. And then Pesach L'Daros is like the gradual growth, like the turtle, go terrapins, like Seder, right? Lo sala b'malo sal mizbechi. When you build an altar, it's not allowed to be with stairs, because right, it has to be with a ramp, slow and steady. Somebody wants to take big steps, somebody wants to take small steps, but it's like it's this gradual growth, it's this gradual process. But there are times where we become so. I like the term I use, and by Aaron HaKohen. In Parashat Shmini it says, Krav al HaMizbeach. Moshe Rabbeinu tells him Krav. So the Ramban says, why is Moshe telling Aaron on the 8th day, right, the high celebration, go and do what you're supposed to do and bring the offerings on behalf of the people? So Ramban says that every time Aaron would try to bring the karbanos, he would have, right, it was basically what I call this paralysis of analysis. I don't know if I coined the term or not, right? But there was this image of this egel. He was fixated on his participation in the sin of the golden calf. And every time he would try to bring the karbanas hatzibur, it was like, Ramban says, there was like this egel like standing in his way. And like, he was just like totally, I said that like on my praba, and there's a guy in the shul who's like a paraplegic. It was like really, after I said it, I was like, oh gosh, like what did I say? I said like I don't have this paralysis of analysis. I'm like, this guy he's a great. He was on his own bike ride, and a few years ago he was injured. Still reads the Torah. He's very active, but as a rabbi, you can relate. Sometimes like you'll say things like that are very innocent, and then. Like someone will come over to you and say, like you're like the worst, like most insensitive, like grown-up person I've ever met. But okay, enough about the fishbowl. But what Parsha, what Moshe tells him is no, and the Besh says is also when a person sins, the first thing they have to do is they have to push the sin out of their mind, totally. This is very much a theme of Rabbi Nachman. We can't serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu ba'atzvus, with depression, with despair. So Bnei Yisrael also now, I think they're like totally frozen, right? They can't go anywhere, they can't move. And what I think Rav Tzadok is saying is that it has to happen b'chipazon, and that's what Moshe is telling Aaron. Krav al mizbeach, like move, like there's going to be time to like think, there's going to be time to process, there's going to be time to like regret. And grow from what you've gone through, but now is not that time. Now's the time to come close. Now's the time to grow. Now's the time to just like jump, do something that is totally out of character. So that's what right. So just read the end, right? Because I was makusher behem tzarich mushma harega shemisar b'ritzon Hashem v'lachboz also rega until to grab that moment almost, right? L'maher, l'tseis mehem ulayuchal. Like you have to pack up all of your spiritual belongings and get into your wagon and have a Yom Pleitasenu, right when that moment arrives. Like there are moments that Bnei Yisrael had, there are moments we have Befrat where we just have to, gather up all of our spiritual belongings and make a move that is so much out of character. I mean, I'm talking about it in terms of, personally, figuring out, community, a pulpit, like to go to, like, do I have to, is this a time of chipazon to just do something that is totally out of character that, I would not, have, I would not, it's not a jump like I would have taken, but, maybe like, that's what's built into Chodesh Nisan. Every time every year, this time comes around, and these words of Rav Tzadok, V'achar kach, shuv yelech, b'metinos, ula'at kedim Pesach Doros. And afterwards, then it's like slow and steady like Pesach Doros. So it's amazing, this first Geulah is different than all the other Geulas. This first Geulah, and like I'm sure like all of us have had moments like these in our lives where I think what Rav Tzadok is saying is we're doing something out of character because we have to. Like if we just continue to grow along the trajectory which is healthy in a normal way, so there's not going to be that intense paradigm shift that needs to happen. Like once in a while we have to like just do something that's so out of character that is such a like chipazo moment in order to to be removed from to be redeemed.
Is it when you're paralyzed? Like, is it,
I mean, that's my reading of it. I don't.
Like, how do you know when to jump?
I mean, because that's what we talk about how Bnei Yisrael was like in Memta Shari Tuma.
Right.
Like I always see those Mamar Chazal as like Bnei Yisrael is like total like they can't move on their own. Like there has to be like this like Big Bang or like Achishera, like this blast that's gonna like give them. It's like in all these like Star Wars or Star Trek movie, like the ship is like damaged. It's not like it's and they need like one big thrust that's gonna like launch them into
gravity.
Yeah.
Gravity.
And I don't think it's necessarily such a seamless thing to go from such an extreme move to then going back to slow and steady. Like I think that's a lot of people would say that that's like a very hard adjustment. Like even like talking about like I know like someone who did it Som Diburim, like they felt like they had to do something very extreme because they were very unhappy with their speech, and they said that for years afterward they felt socially awkward about their speech because, and it wasn't even like with such a long Som Diburim or anything. It was just like to go from something so extreme to then trying to get back into the regular course. I mean, even the when the Jews leave in Mitzrayim, they are in the desert for 40 years. They have a 40-year period of transition. It's like this extreme period that takes them 40 years to then be stable.
Right, to like reinsert into the atmosphere, right, is not like a simple thing.
After you go through the chipazon movement.
Well, maybe that's what the slow and steady is. Chipazon.
Right.
It's a gradual return. Part of the redemption is equally part cutting off completely, and then returning to yourself gradually. It's not like two separate redemptions, I think. What he's saying is part of one continuous whole redemption.
Like it's
The
not
first
supposed
part
to be
is
seamless.
go, and then there's like a return to self gradually.
It's sort of shove, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not too, okay.
Right. I mean, you see, that readjustment. I mean, you see this with Israel. I think that's like also a great analogy of what you're saying. Is like the chipazon is like, these kids have been vaccinated in like the day schools, and then they like blast, You never heard that term. That's my
Vaccinated. Right? That's a good one.
They get vaccine when you go into day school, like kindergarten. They give you a vaccine to make you immune to like anything that's real or like feeling or like any thing that's like nitzchi or ruchli. Yeah, and you become immune. You can't you don't want to get infected, God forbid. And then you could die, and like you not end up on Wall Street. I mean, it could be really bad. So, like, you get a vaccine, right? It's not, every year, you get the vaccinations, you know, through your dry teachers, you know, through the, you know, the larger like modern Orthodox institutions. I'm sorry. Okay, we don't have to.
Dude, you're offending me.
Yeah. No, but like, but what happens sometimes is
very
then like.
good.
Right, that's my brothers. I have 4 brothers right now. Yeah. But what happens like, I mean, what a lot of us, not me, because I kind of was like the YU guy who grew up yeshivish, and I kind of like Hillel, and then we're like modern Orthodox wannabes, kind of, or post-Haredi, whatever camp we fit into, but like Chippah,
Neo-Haredi.
Modern black.
Yeah.
Lubavitch.
Defrock Lubavitchers. But what happened? Right, what happens a lot of times is like people have that, you know, that intense year, and then that's the Chippah zone, and then afterwards it's not you know, it's not healthy, it's not sustainable. That's Pesach Mitzrayim, and then Pesach Doros is like, okay, like now I saw a glimpse of like what it could be. It's like that's what the Chanukah Sabayis was meant to be. This is what it could be. Now you gotta you get a glimpse. That's what the chuppah is, right? You get a glimpse of how great it can be. Now you got to do all the hard work, you know, to make it a reality. So that's like Pesach Mitzrayim is like that. It like gets you out of it's like it gives you the blast, but then reinserting into the atmosphere, and like adjusting is
it seems like
very,
also
very hard.
a good like test or marker of both the Pesach Mitzrayim experience and the Pesach Ladoros experience is that you'll see a lot of times people will undergo a tremendous like moment in their life, or a lot of light will be shined on them, and then they'll like immediately return and revert back to before the light came into their life, you know, as in like they were changed by it, even if it's a little bit, and you know. Because I think we're afraid that of that Pesach Mitzrayim, because it's so shocking and freeing. So our initial reaction is to just return immediately back, which is like what the Israel did. It's like we have to return back to exactly who we are, because like, yeah, that was shocking. I kind of didn't like it, and like the test is like the Doros of like, is that kind of are you still working towards that, or have you reverted, you know, immediately back towards it?
It's hard to recognize that as progress also, because you're used to that huge explosion of progress, and day by day it's not even something that's otherwise harder. If you ever read Faith and Doubt by Roy Norman Lamb, the first chapter, the first page, he quotes one of the rabbis, the Siddush rabbis, I forgot which one, and he says that the initial waters of Torah are bitter. That learning Torah is bitter in the beginning. But if you keep holding on and you keep going forward with it, he says the light of God will shine upon your face. And you will become the light of all humanity and everything. He says it's bitter, and he says the reason why it's bitter is because Hashem wants to distinguish us between the Erev Rav and the real Jews. He's doing a havchana. He's making a distinguishment. That's a distinction. And if you hold on to it long enough, you'll see the power of it and the light, and how much strength is in it. It's handmade.
Amen. Right, but it's like that. Right, it's like it's those Pesach Ladoros that are just like at times it's hard. And you feel just like boom, like. What am I doing? Why am I banging my head against the wall? Like, just time after time after time. It's like David HaMelech, right? The Kotzker says that David HaMelech is praised in Tehillim. He praises the ocean for banging against the land. So the Kotzker asks, why is that a praise? The water knows that God will never, right, let the ocean overtake the dry land. And the Kotzker says that that's why David HaMelech praises the ocean, because nonetheless the ocean keeps banging, coming in further and further towards the high tide. And each time, like it's painful, right? You experience a chippah zone, and then it's like, oh, it's a letdown. It's like, the show is over. And like you want to get back to the magic. But like
magic's not there.
Yeah, the magic needs to be
created.
Right, it needs to be created, but it needs, it happens slowly, it happens gradually. That's Pesach Daros. Pesach Daros is like the whole Seder night. It's like telling the story and building up, and then, it's something we're building up to a whole year by talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that kind of Geulah in a person's life is something that's built towards with each and every day. Each and every day, you can't have a Yom Pleit L'Seinu, but after you have that Yom Pleit L'Seinu, you know that you're capable of that, and every day, you're just banging away. Like Rabbi Akiva, he sees the water banging against the rock, and he says, "I can do it. If the water can dull this rock, then the Torah can also make a mention of me." So this is the time, I think, and this is what let's see unless somebody wants. Is there more we have to expand on this idea? I think we should see the Majid Rebbe has a beautiful piece where he talks about the exactly. So he talks about the importance. He connects it to Parshas Tzav.
Yeah. It's a nice arrow.
Exactly. So, courtesy of the Imre Baruch, Simon says, "V'nir od b'zeh." He's talking about the Karban Ola. There's another piece I was going to bring, which reads the Ola and Tzav into the Manishtana, which is very beautiful from the Ola Ephraim. But this is another direction. V'nir od b'zeh. Ki l'chor ma'ot sivoy hazrizus kan dafka b'Karban Ola. So we know Karban Ola, right? Rashi says Tzav is a lashon of zrizos. You have to do it quickly. Miyad uludaros. Anytime there's a loss of money, you have to act swiftly, right? Whenever you get a pledge from somebody, if you're a shnar, so you want to collect right away, right? You don't want the moment to end. You want to collect on the pledge that they've made. And the Karban Ola is a carbon where the owner is not getting anything from the carbon because it's Eish Tamid Tukan al Mizbeach Lo Sicha, right? It's totally incinerated. So whenever a person pledges to bring a Karban Ola, we want to know that they're going to bring it right away. There should be a degree of zrizos, because we're afraid you're going to renege on the promise that you've made. Elohine Yadua Ein Lecha Adam Shein Lo Shah. Every person has their time. Ki Eish Lo B'chol Yom Eiza Hir Her Tov. Berusad Liba V'Cheshek Levodas Haborei. Every person has, right? Somebody has a Hir Tov. Every day you have like a chukka to do something good. This is what, right? The Baal Shem says in Perek Avos, it says every day there's a bas kol, right? Not my daughter, bat kol. I wanted to name her bat kol. Every day there's a bas kol that comes out from our chorv that says Olam L'brios Melbona Shel Torah. Woe to the creations for throwing off the yoke of Torah. So the Baal Shem says, well, if there's a bas kol but nobody hears it, then what good is it? And so the Baal Shem says that no, it's not that nobody hears it. Anytime a person has an inspiration to do something good, it's their soul that's in tune with this heavenly voice that's coming out from Har Chorv every day that's saying, right, every day, right, every day a person has like, whatever moment you get like, I want to do something good, right? So this morning I was like, I'm going to spend like 3 hours in the gym, whatever, and like I got a call that somebody's dying in the hospital, can I come over? So I was like, I got the call, and I thought about like not answering because it was a 914 area code and whatever. But then I was like, maybe it's like like an opportunity. I got the call. I'm like, yeah, I can go. I spent like an hour and a half like with this woman, probably her last day in this world, saying Vida and like with her daughter, and like you have like every day a person has like, like I want to throw somebody a smile. Like I'm grouching around the whole day, but then I'm like, you want to throw somebody like a nice, hey, you kind of step out of like your zone of your Dalet Amos for a second, right? Everybody has it. But sometimes, right, you have that inspiration, but you don't do anything about it. You have that Hir Tov, and the moment ends, right? And you don't do anything about it. So back to V'hu. This is what he says. V'hu Baskol hamachrezes b'chol yom al tshuva kanoda. This is what the Baal, he's quoting the Baal Shem over here about the Baskol that comes out every day. Acha ikar hu ki hira tov shenafal b'machshavto. Tzarich sheyotze miyad mikoyach el apoyel be'eza avoda tava. V'im lav hu kachalom ya'uf u'chanan chalav v'nevad. So what he's saying is sometimes. So why do you bring the carbon ola? What does the Gemara say? The Gemara gives two reasons. The Gemara says either you bring a carbon ola because you were mevatel a mitzvah aseh, you didn't shake lulav, you didn't bring matzah, so you bring a carbon ola, or it's brought for hir her halev. Right? What does hir her halev mean? Right? So I would assume, what does it mean?
The intimations.
Right, yeah. Person wants to go, person wants to go be Mazana, right? Or whatever. Yeah. Be going to, right? It's not Shtikli Shami. Maybe they want to go into the bodega and get the schmutz again. But anyway, they don't, right? So a person has a hira lev, the oila is brought in the same place in the chatas, and the Nesir Shalom says the reason is because when you do a sin b'shaygig, it's because you've already created a connection to that sin by being mahar, by thinking about it. Right? So your thoughts and your intentions actually do matter because you've created some psychological or emotional connection that is then manifested in the sin that a person does unintentionally. That's why the carbonol is brought in the same place that the carbon chatas is brought. Because your thoughts, right? We believe you can control your thoughts. And our thoughts do matter. And what we're mahar about, right? It creates some connection to the sin, which is then actualized in a sin b'shayir. But the Majid Rebbe, listen to this. He takes it in another direction. He says, pump fakert. He says, when the Gemara says that the oila is mechaper for here alev, it means no. It means when a person has that, it's like, yeah, I want to flash that smile. But then they say, no, like I'm a bad mofo, I can't smile, right? And they just quench it, right? They don't do anything about it. That's the hir alev. Then that's the hir alev that we're atoning for. It's the good, right? The great adage, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's the hir alev that we didn't carry out to fruition, that we didn't do anything about. V'zeu shepirashnu b'cholim. Ein ha'oila ba ela al hir alev. Hainu l'chaper al hir hatoiv. Shehalach le'ived. We have to atone for the good. You see, people think, if I don't do anything, if I'm complacent, so I didn't do anything wrong. The Majid Rebbe said, no. That hira tov that went to waste, that needs atonement. That's a schlechte gezach. That's what it means. Tzav is the minute you have that hira tov, go ahead and do it. Don't leave it. Right? B'chipazon. Right? Jump at it. Jump out of the fire. Gather up your family and ride right out of town. Right? Miyad kashe mis'ayr b'machshava sh'adam hir tov ayisal lomer l'kashe efne. Right? Al timer kashe efne eshna Hashem elo tipana. Don't say I'm going to do it when I have the time because maybe we're never going to have time. Right? Tick tock, time country asi. Rag lasaitz miyad bezrizos eze of the tova. Ubechein yesh la l'machshava kiyum la l'daris v'dvarenu v'zeu shamar b'yotzar tzorich l'zaris b'makom shechisaron kis when you're losing money. Ratzlamak shehira toiv berusad liba hu be'in pizer mama l'karbanos u'l'mitzvahs Hashem b'valei tzorich l'ziris b'yotzar l'tzarif miyad ha'shav satei l'maseh ba'adad t'ova. Wow. So what he's saying is really what this time of the year is all about. That now, right, everything's coming, all the planting, all of the potential, right? This is the time to actualize it. This is the time when Bnei Yisrael shot like a shooting star, right? It's something that was totally out of character. Something that may have, remained in the realm of potential was actualized. It was something, right? What's the biggest tragedy? I mean, whatever. I can't even talk, like my Facebook wall is just filled with, ignorance. With this fire and all this stuff. But what's the tragedy when somebody dies young? Right? The tragedy is this lost potential. It's the koch. It's this potential. It's what could have been. It's what could have been actualized. But what's even sadder is somebody, right, who lives their whole life and doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the potential that they have deep inside. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. V'ata tidaber al kol chachmei lev asher li sifra chachma. That Moshe, you have to speak to all the people that have the wisdom in their heart, this latent potential, and you have to tell them, wow, asher li sifra chachma. Do you know what you're filled with? Do you know what's inside of you? Do you know it can shoot across, right, the hemisphere? And only then will they be able to make the big day Aaron, right, the Kohanic vestments for Aaron to wear, l'kach l'chanali. That's like, I mean, the whatever. That's my problem. I'm sure it's a lot of people in this generation's problem. Is just like bringing what's inside out. And those chipazon moments are for us to get like these magnificent, glimpses that are streaking across the horizon of what can be. And then we see that and we're like, wow, Pesach Mitzrayim, that can be a reality. And then Pesach Daros is like B'chol Yom V'Yom. That's the grind. Pesach Daros is taking it, right? Is taking it me'akoach el ha'poel. That's the tzav. That's what the Majid Rebbe says. The oil is mechaper for here alev, for all the times in our lives when we should have known that just like Pesach Mitzrayim can happen each and every day, Pesach Doros can happen, and we need to bring that out. We need to, we need to make the seeds sprout, the grass grow, the flowers blossom. That's all I have to say about that. So that's yeah. So please, I'm Maso Maton.
Yes, good. This is really exactly. I think I'm going to say this over at my Pesach Seder. Yeah. In front of my family, my brother, and everyone.
Matzah is God's resource also. The whole thing.
So, yeah. That's all I have to say about that as far as now.
Yeah, matzah. Right, matzah is... What is matzah?
It's Jesus. I mean, that's what like everybody says about matzah.
Right, it's
the first topic is about. It's Jesus. Mitzvah, it's like dafka the mitzvah that requires Jesus. Right? I just can't waste.
Don't take another step.
Yeah.
Just
don't blame it on yourself.
But it's right, it's hard. Because, right.
I think also the key is...
I don't really know if they go together. I thought that was...
Definitely.
What about
Geulah
no question.
Geulah Mitzrayim is like within every Geulah that happens.
Oh.
Whether the Geulah Shlomo or just personal Geulos.
And archetype.
And this, it's like, in order for Pesach Ladoros to like not make you want to give up and have Yeish, you have to have that image of Geulah Mitzrayim with you, that moment of like, yes, right now, and for however long the time is, I'm X, but I'm equally also Y, who was the person who, sometimes we get kind of like, oh, I had a moment where I like detached from my old self, whatever that even old self, new self, did something crazy, and then we like get confused that like, now I have to be someone who's like constantly detaching from everything, versus like, like having that, like they're both me, and you're holding on to, yes, that was me who like ejected, and it's also me who's like moving forward.
Absolutely. It's yachad. It's all it's all the same me. It's not, right, it's not like that was like, right, so maybe not out of character, right, it means you're still, maybe it's wrong for me to refer to even Kippah as out of character.
I didn't mean to like, it wasn't like,
no, but
calling
it's
into question your language choice.
Right, but it's really the same, it means the same being.
Like
and to look at it,
it's out of the father and the Seder is supposed to do things that are out of character for him, so the children ask, right? That's like the whole beginning of the Seder. He starts giving out other stuff. He's acting weird, like, well, like what are you doing? So the kids could also get involved and try to start attaching it also a little bit. That has to go for that sleep puzzle a little bit, like
kids are.
So they right. So they then attach her, and like this could be me. This is also me. right?
So my question is, what is with Rav Tzadok we're saying with Pesach Doris and Pesach and Geulah Doris and Geulah Mitzrayim, whatever. Like we're also supposed to became out of Mitzrayim, so we all have our own. We have both those Geulas in our own lives, also.
Yeah, I mean, Rav is saying that they're both. Right, they're definitely different. Right, he's saying that it's important to see them as the same Geulah, as different manifestations of the same Geulah. The Geulah Mitzrayim is the Av, it's the archetype of all redemptions, and that everything else is the way subsequent redemption manifests itself, and that they're all maybe I don't know I think I was reading that I don't know if Rav Tzadok necessarily says that. He says they're just different, different. They're different avenues. Like Geulah Mitzrayim is one thing, and Geulah, after that is different. But I think that we could say that like they're really just different facets of the same Geulah, and especially if you see all subsequent Geulah as part of Geulah Mitzrayim. So there's times like where it just needs to be Geulah Mitzrayim, and then there's times where we just have to build on that in like a normal redemptive process. It's even be'ito or it's even ani rochav al chamor or achishena, right? The way that the Gemara says, either Mashiach could come right? He's likened to a pauper riding on a donkey. That's like Geulah, subsequent Geulos, right? That's like be'ito. That's like a process of the ingathering of the exiles, and right, Rishis Smichas Geulah Seinu. Sorry for the anti. But then there's also Achishena, which is like a shooting, it's like a shooting star. It could happen, just like Geulah Mitzrayim. And I think it's both. It happens in both. I mean, in my life, it's happened in both ways. I was in some dark places, and then, I had these. I'm part of my year. I was in.
Orny's house.
Yeah. What? No, not that far. I was in a different way. I had that. I had an experience that was just an Achishena experience. It catapulted me out of YU. I got thrown out of YU for that Purim, but it then
It's good Purim.
It was good.
You're a sleeper, so you're not supposed to make any activity. You're not supposed to make any disturbances.
I was dancing.
You were dancing.
I was dancing with that. No, not because of that. There was a whole Maisa, but in the midst of that Maisa, there was a moment where Ari Willig and all the Rosh Yeshiva went out into the street dancing with all the Bachar in black and white. And my roommate, right, who got stabbed after being in the army, Harv Bromwitz, whatever, he was dressed in his army uniform, and I was dressed in Depends, an adult diaper. And I was dancing with her. I was very, okay, forget about it. I can show you a picture you really want to see. But, not that wasn't that moment. But chipazon, right, is just this moment where you just get shot out of a cannon. Right? Where you just, totally, and then, I've seen that in, gradual growth, where, you build, you're just building on it. You're building towards, that moment that was a great gig in the sky. You're just
I remember in the Tivari, they used to tell us the first few sessions of learning that we had, the speeches that the rabbis would always harp on this theme of Achashwalti Meis Hashem Osu Avakesh Shifti Beis Hashem Koi Mechayai Lachasos B'Noam Hashem Uvaker B'Echalo. They were supposed to, we were in the old city, we were by the Kotel, and it was all about don't let yourself get too desensitized to the Kotel. Be like David HaMelech, be Levakir B'Echalo, be like a visitor. Always be refreshing yourself, renewing yourself, and recreating that magic that you originally, that inspiration that you originally had. And it was I still try to do that when I go to Israel, is to go to Rav Yoel's house and try to reclaim some of those moments of inspiration. I don't go to Rabina's house, I'll be honest with you. Stay with him.
Maybe you have to go out of character next time and go to Rabina.
No, I don't think he wants to be. I don't think he wants to be your answer.
Yeah, but that's the motive this time of year is like I think having those like pikazo moments, and then like making sure that we know that the rest that's a geulah we can attain, and like taking taking those action steps to really do that.
But do you think pikazo is more effective in some ways as a rock bottom instead of this like intense moment of redemptive high? Because it seems like all the things we're describing, even Geulah Mitzrayim, is like laced with this immense darkness because you're escaping something that's so incredibly bad and toxic in a way.
Right. I mean, it almost needs to, for there to be some journey, there needs to be like space. Right?
That's not the generational one. Like the generational one is more mundane. It's like escaping this everyday routine, which could be good or bad. It's not necessarily pejorative. But I feel like the Mitzrayim one is something that's underlined with something that's really.
Oh my God.
Right.
If you use
first it might be a problem.
Take it and put it into like a good experience, like just because you just said the road of life, even if it's good, So if it's good, it makes it that much harder for someone to have to say.
Tell him he's a minion, man.
I need to go break character. I need to.
Fine. So.
I want to shake up what's good. I'm making a lot of money.
Right,
That's comfortable. It's good. Rock bottom is like
I'm going too.
We've all had our own rock bottoms at moments, but like I would never speak to someone else's. But rock bottom, in a way, it allows a person to move forward because you feel rock bottom. Whereas if it's good and it's better and things are good, then it's much harder, I think, in terms of avoda. And like God service to move to like actually want to catapult yourself in a different direction because you're like, oh, I don't want to leave this situation.
Trying to work on
things are bad. You obviously want to go.